So we've talked about sports photography in general. Let's look at some specific sports and suggestions on photographing specific sports. Start with basketball. Basketball is shot from fixed positions along the baseline. At major games, they may be assigned by the sports information director. And at a really major game or something like the NCAA tournament, there could be two rows of photographers, so bring a short step stool. Basketball is typically shot with two bodies, one with a kind of a mid-range zoom for offense, something like a 24 to 70, or maybe a 70 to 200, and then a long telephoto, 3 to 400 millimeters, for the defense at the other end of the court. The safety shot is the free throw. Once you've got a couple of free throws, you don't need to do more, but it's a good idea to do that just to make sure you've got something, you know where and when that's going to happen. Remotes are widely used in basketball. You'll see remotes on the backboard. You'll see remotes in the ceiling. You'll see remotes sitting on the floor in front of a photographer. And again, you need to check with the venue's media relations people to set that up. I think basketball is probably also the sport most likely to have a player in your lap. If you cover more than 2 or 3 games of basketball, the chances are pretty good somebody will run over the end and be in your lap during the season. Here's a look at the setup for a CSU game. You see the green tape? That's the photographer's space for everyone who comes to the game. The refs get the wide green paint. The cheerleaders are behind the narrow stripe, and their toes go right up to the edge of that, so you really don't have a lot of space. You want to be, again, tight. You're looking for that competition over the ball. It doesn't have to be a free throw shot to be a successful basketball picture. Here's a remote that was set up on the post on the end and kind of looking out over the goal and the whole thing. This was set up so that anytime a photo was taken of the regular play down here, it tripped this camera as well. So most of the photos from this camera are completely useless, but once in a while you get one that's really special. Again, towards the end of the season, if your team is doing well, be ready for things like a trophy presentation, confetti, the coach cutting down the nets. Talk about football. At football games, general field positions for photography are outside of the 25-yard lines. The end zone is really popular because nobody's going to walk in front of you, so you don't get blocked. If you're on the sidelines, the chances are pretty good as the play comes towards the sideline, somebody's going to step out in front of your camera, a ref if nobody else. Football is typically a 2 to 3 body sport. You're going to have one body with a really long telephoto, something 400 to 600 millimeters. You'll have one with a medium telephoto, like a 70 to 200, and then keep something wide around your neck and ready to go, because if the play suddenly comes on top of you, you need to be able to drop your others, grab the wide lens, and shoot without really thinking about it or looking at it. On sunny days, you've got a lighting decision to make. Do you want to front light your subjects or backlight your subjects? And we'll look at some examples. With football, it's also worth knowing kneeling is much safer and gives you a more dramatic view. If the players come right at you on the sideline, it's much safer for you to be lower. They will jump over you. And here's a perfect example from a Rocky Mountain Showdown a couple of years ago. It literally landed up right in front of me, and I ended up getting some TV time out of it. And you can see me trying to stay out of the way and not get clobbered, and there's the picture I got of an out-of-focus player behind. Here's front lighting. It's nice and contrasty. It lets you have a really high shutter speed. You get some light under the helmets, maybe. When the sun goes down, it can get dark. Check out the ISO here. It's up at 10,000 because we still need our shutter speed to be high. Notice that 2,000th of a second isn't quite high enough to freeze his feet. Okay, here's backlighting. The problem with backlighting is you end up with a really bright field. The nice thing about backlighting, especially in a football stadium, is you have a darker subject with a darker background and a nice rim light going around the edges of the helmets. They separate nicely from the background, and you can really see into the helmets because the light is very even on the shadow side of the field. And it's a dramatic look, especially if you can get down nice and low and you're shooting just over the top of the field, so you end up with a thin green stripe. And if you're really lucky and in a good position, you can get a dramatic reception picture. Don't ignore the other stuff going on in the game. Football has lots of other action, and this can be a big part of the game. Baseball and softball is kind of a zen sport. Lots of waiting and brief periods of intense action. Plays with the runners are predictable in that you know where they're going to go. They're going to start at home, go to first, go to second, go to third, go to home. Fielding shots are a little less predictable, but when the ball goes up, you've got a second or two of hang time to figure out who's going to catch it, grab the appropriate lens, and get your shot. It can be a long lens sport. Those outfielders are a long ways away. So the close bases are going to be a 70 to 200, but you're going to have a really long lens to get the far bases or to get the outfield. Do know that if you are inside the fence at a ball game, you can get hit with a foul ball very quickly. And those, a baseball hit at that distance could actually injure you pretty good. Baseball can use insanely long lenses. On the left, we see a 12 to 1700 millimeter lens that was built in 1993 for Japanese baseball. And that was a $60,000 special order lens from Nikon when it was out. On the right, we see a whole passel of photographers, all of whom are using a 600 millimeter f4. Those are $12,500 lenses each, not counting the cameras, the tripods, the stuff. But with a long lens, you can get a nice tight picture from a long ways away. Here's the sort of thing you can get if you're wide and you're at the fence to where you can shoot through the fence or inside the fence. Don't ignore the other stuff that happens. For example, at a softball game, the team will all come out and sign autographs until the last fan leaves. And that's, again, a big part of the experience. Track and field can be fun. Multiple simultaneous events are going on, and one photographer simply cannot shoot it all. So if everything has to be covered, you're going to be part of a team. Otherwise, you get to pick and choose what looks appealing to you. Different disciplines are going to need different lenses and such. Some will get shorter lenses, some will get longer lenses. Track and field often involves lots of remote cameras. And as I say, it's a marathon. They're going to go all day. So something like the hammer throw or the shot put, where if he lets go of that accidentally, you're going to be in some danger. You're going to need to do this with a remote camera. Set the camera inside the net with permission and stand outside the net to trip the shutter. Okay? Relay races can be shot with short or long lenses, depending on how much you want to be able to blur the background and kind of where on the track they are relative to you. Things like the jumps, you can get in fairly close and get dramatic. Again, here's a remote or a long lens shot from outside where she's going to let go of it, looking into the net. Tennis is harder than it looks. Typical shooting positions are either kind of mid-court, shooting both directions, or over the net with a long lens. You need to be very low and you need to sit still. Tennis players expect their environment to be quiet. If you can work with a mirrorless camera, it will allow you to be quieter still. And the timing is way harder than it looks, because you want to get it when the ball contacts the racket, and that happens for such a very brief period of time. Especially as you're just learning, it's going to take you a while to get the timing down on your shutter. So again, you need to take a lot of pictures from something like tennis to work out how long your shutter is going to need to get the picture. Cross country isn't just the runners doing the running. You as a photographer are going to have to chase them across the field. A lot of the running looks the same, so look for emotion. Typically, very few people photograph cross country, so it has very loose access. That means you can go play, okay? Has lots of lens flexibility. Use what you've got, and it gives you the chance to explore different angles and different looks. You can go low to keep things clean. You can shoot the warm-ups of people running back and forth, and as we pan with her running to the left, everybody else is running to the right, and you get an interesting effect. Again, look for the emotion as they're running their last meet of the season, and they realize this is the last time this team is going to be together. Swimming and diving, it can be difficult to see the faces because their faces are down on the water, so you have to wait for them to come up. Or place yourself on the deck so that where they come up for a breath, you happen to be in the right place. Pools are frequently kind of dim and often have inexpensive bad color lights. Our pools on campus are getting better, but they're still not fabulous. Some diving pools will actually have an underwater port, and you can ask for access. A problem with swimming, and you see it in swimming pools, you see it in greenhouses, is when in the winter when you take your cool gear from your cold car into that warm, humid pool air, you'll get massive amounts of condensation. It takes 20 to 30 minutes for it to clear because your equipment literally has to warm up to the ambient temperature. Don't force it. If you cannot speed up the process, you'll make a mess on your lens. Just go ahead and put the gear in the bags, and you just have to wait until it warms up. So for something like a swim meet, that means you need to be in the venue 30 or 40 minutes ahead of time to let everything warm up. And again, some of the action is happening outside of the pool. Here's that port that's underwater. The problem with shooting from down here is that you don't know where and when they're going to come. You cannot see the diver until they enter the water. Wait for them to come up for a breath and you can see faces. Diving can be especially dramatic if you're able to get in with special access and light the diver and get something where they're simply in practice. Volleyball can be unpredictable if you're not familiar with the sport. The safety spot is up on the mezzanine at Moby, at least, where you're looking over the top of the net. The photos are more dramatic from the floor. If you sit at the back of the court towards the floor, you will be hit by the ball at some point. And it's just going to get really big, really fast, and there won't be anything you can do about it other than peel the camera off your nose when you get smacked. You want to show both players, you want to show the ball, and what you don't want is to just have everybody's hands up with no ball. And again, that ball is moving very quickly. Don't forget the coaches at sporting events. Teams come and go. Coaches tend to stay. Or when the coach doesn't do well and gets fired, somebody's going to ask you for a picture of that coach. Again, action can be dramatic from the floor. Watch for those post-point reaction shots. We're here in Colorado. Let's talk about rodeo as a sport. Remember, you've got two athletes with rodeo. You've got the cowboy, but the livestock is also very much an athlete in this sport. Unless you've got a special permission, and that's hard to get if you don't do this professionally, you're going to be shooting from outside the fence. Most events are very intense and very quick. A bull ride runs, 8 seconds? Rodeo arenas are notoriously dark, and with that brown dirt on the floor, you're not going to get any reflective help from the floor. So you're going to be working at very high ISOs. You don't want to be changing lenses in the rodeo arena because everything is super dusty, and you want to keep that dust out of the mirror box and off your sensor. It helps to know the rules a little bit. For example, in the rough stock events, the cowboy's not allowed to touch his horse with his other hand. So if you get him holding on with both hands, that's bad technique on his part, and he's not going to be happy with the picture. Don't forget the things like the little kids doing the mutton busting. Again, two athletes in this picture. You've got the cowgirl and you've got the horse. CNN runs a good sports gallery every week. So does places like Sports Illustrated and ESPN. Go have a look at their galleries and see if you can kind of reverse engineer how people did their pictures. And for some more reading, here are a few other resources. It's also a fun look at Canon and Nikon, what they brought as loaner equipment to the 2018 Olympics. I say this just for fun. Canon brought 1,359 different items. And just as a way of comparing, they brought 100 D1X or 1DX Mark IIs at $550 a piece, just for those one cameras. Nikon didn't report numbers, but said the inventory is worth several hundred luxury cars. So how much is a luxury car? $40,000? 400 of luxury cars would be $16 million worth of cameras. And it's just mind-boggling looking at these shelves of equipment. Those lenses are probably $6,000 to $8,000 to $12,000 each. Those ones on the bottom on the left are easily $12,000 lenses. And Canon and Nikon loan them out to professionals at major events.